Hello everyone, welcome to today's video where we will be exploring how the 2008 dystopic series The Hunger Games by Suzanne draws from a lot of ideas and values from ancient Rome, namely gladiator battles. These ideas from ancient Rome in the past continue into the present and according to Suzanne are only going to continue into the future. I reread the first Hunger Games book recently and I found myself to really be able to see the political message of the book a lot clearer now than when I was younger, and I also noticed a lot of the references to ancient Rome that I didn't previously. I'm going to be discussing all of the ones that I noticed in this video, but if you have anything that you would like to bring up regarding this topic, please feel free to discuss it in the comments below. Ancient Rome held the ever-famous Roman games, which included things like chariot races, public executions, animal fights, and the most famous of them all, gladiator fights, the ones we're going to be focusing on today. Let's start with exploring the name that the world of the Hunger Games takes place in, Panem. The Roman games were actually very significant in politics. I know. As if the people were entertained, they were distracted by the potential failings of the emperor. Emperors could gain popularity and the people's favour by hosting games, providing entertainment. The Roman satirical poet Juvenal wasn't blind to this, as discussed in this passage. Long ago the people shed their anxieties. Ever since we do not sell our votes to anyone. For the people, who once conferred imperium, symbols of office, legions, everything, now hold themselves in check and anxiously desire only two things: the grain dole and the chariot races in the circus. Basically what he is saying is people no longer care for politics because they only care about having enough to eat and be able to go to the games. Juvenal is most famous for coining the phrase bread and circuses. It's a concept which refers to people ignoring their own human needs and rights in favour of having the superficial appeasement of entertainment. The phrase bread and circuses in Latin is, ignore my terrible pronunciation, Panem et circenses. Something like that. Panem, the world the Hunger Games takes place in, is literally named after this idea, and it reflects the attitudes of those in the capital perfectly. They get all this entertainment of watching the Hunger Games, and it makes them turn a blind eye to the reality of what's really going on. The wrongdoings of President Snow and basically turning the districts into a glorified slave class is completely overlooked. And this political technique of distracting the people with entertainment is still used today. As Hamish says to Katniss and Peter in the Catching Fire film, from now on you're to be a distraction so people forget what the real problems are. One of the most interesting things about responses to the Hunger Games, particularly with the release of the film, is that this is a dystopic story which gives messages against consumerism and capitalism. It explores ideas of government control and dictatorship, and how the rich upper class people who benefit from these things completely ignore the struggles of the poor and the people stuck in poverty who are the victims of these things. The films have been banned in some countries but in fear that it will strike rebellion. While one of the biggest questions raised in response to the Hunger Games that I observed when it was popular in a Western society was whether or not you were Team Gale or Team Peter. People were so distracted by the entertainment of the film that they completely overlooked the messages and parts of the film that reflected them. It's the bread and circuses concept in present times. This could also be potentially blamed on the similar release time of Stephenie Meyer's 2008 paranormal romance series, Twilight. It was one of the only other popular books for teenagers written at the time, and it started to birth the YA genre. Perhaps some teenagers didn't know how to react to something so serious marketed to them when the only other thing that they had experience with was a trashy vampire romance. As the Twilight series also featured a major debate over which boy you wanted the female protagonist to end up with. But that was a bit off topic. Roman gladiator games and the Hunger Games are very, very similar, and purposely so. Gladiators were slaves who trained and fought to fight for the entertainment of the Roman people. In most cases, there was only one winner, just like how there's only one victor. With the exception of the instance of the Spartacus revolt, gladiators didn't fight against this or revolt. That was because they were given the hope of potentially becoming free. If a gladiator became popular enough, they could earn enough money to potentially buy their freedom. This almost never happened. trained. And ironically, a lot of the gladiators who did go on to become free went on to just train other younger gladiators, similarly to the victors in the Hunger Games. But the hope that the gladiators were given was enough to keep them in line and make them play their part. In the words of President Snow, hope is the only thing stronger than fear, hence why there is a victor and the chance of winning the Hunger Games. The Roman Games were accessible to almost everyone, even women were allowed to attend as long as they sat in the bad top seats. Which I think is quite similar to how all of the districts are forced to watch the games. Prim watches the games in a television in her school classroom, and Gail is seen in the mines where a TV is playing. Romans very often had favourite gladiators who they glorified and treated like celebrities, as we know through the many examples of graffiti and murals throughout Rome where people celebrated their favourite gladiators. Gladiators also got sponsors to support them. The tributes are treated much the same, with fame and celebrityism gaining popularity and sponsorships, even though many of them will go on to die. There are also some smaller references to ancient Rome throughout the Hunger Games, which I think are equally as interesting. Some of the character names do come from Roman figures, namely Seneca, Caesar, Titus, Octavian, Plutarch. What all of these characters have in common is that they are from the capital, representing the more Roman figures of a higher status. There isn't really much link that I can observe between the figures that they are named after and the characters themselves. But I do feel it represents that those in the capital are more like the Roman citizens sitting in the stands of the amphitheater watching the gladiators fight. In the Hunger Games book, the game makers are given this description. 20 or so men and women dressed in deep purple robes. They sit in the elevated stands that surround the gymnasium. The purple robes are an easy reference to ancient Rome. Purple dye was really expensive and hard to get, and therefore purple was only worn by the rich, making purple an instant sign of power. The use of elevated stands where those from the capital can sit and watch the games very much reminds me of Roman amphitheaters, with the game makers Snow up in the Emperor's box and the rest of the capital in the stands of the amphitheater. In conclusion, the Hunger Games series by Suzanne draws from the political use of gladiator fights to prevent revolt using the idea of bread and circuses. While the Hunger Games series does include more modern messages of consumerism and capitalism, themes of government control, dictatorship, poverty, and the political use of entertainment are the same themes used throughout ancient Rome, and if Suzanne Collins is right, they're only going to continue into the future, showing that humans never change. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you found it interesting and maybe were able to learn something from it. The Hunger Games series is an amazing series, and I think it's just really cool to see the little ties between that dystopic series set in the future and ancient Rome. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like to support the channel. If you're interested in seeing more content from me, you can subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in more history content, I'm currently making a series called Women of Ancient History, where I create historical profiles of women from ancient history who I believe deserve to be remembered more than they are. Please discuss this topic down in the comments below. I think it's really interesting and I would love to hear more people's insight into it. Thank you very much for watching. Bye!